Even through what was an objectively rough season for the Ignite, Ron Holland still managed to prove himself as one of the most intriguing prospects in the draft. Now, he wasn't without some real growing pains along the way himself, but the level of production and improvement he showed while being heavily relied upon as a creator was positive. Listed at 6'8", but likely closer to 6'6" or 6'7", Holland is an athletic and high motor wing who makes an impact in transition, as a slasher, and in multiple ways defensively. His three-point shot is still a major question mark, and he'll need to improve as a decision maker, but as one of the youngest players in the draft, there's a lot to work with in his game on the wing. Holland has long made his biggest impact on the defensive side of the ball, and I'd expect that to be the case early. He's a solid mover on ball who did a good job of recovering into plays and absorbing contact into his body, and he has some of his best moments overall this season, hounding players at the point of attack and coming up with steals. He spent time guarding multiple positions this year, from guards like Scottie Pippen Jr. and Ashton Hagans to a Leonard Miller and Alondes Williams, and will likely do the same in the NBA, but most easily matching up with wings. Now, he can be a bit inconsistent and will need to clean up his footwork on closeouts and elsewhere on the perimeter, but his potential versatility, especially with added strength, make this appealing and something he should embrace as a spot he can make an impact the earliest in the league.
Now poked in the eye, 3 to shoot on the shot clock. Davis hounded by Hollins.
So what you're saying is he's the prototypical today's game center. That's what they do when you take away.
Player to reach double digits, along with Jenkins and Holland.
You know, when he gets in traffic like that, to be lower on his dribble and keep in possession of the ball is the most important thing.
Molinar. Jones wants to pull it out for the final shot. 4 seconds to play here in this third quarter. Holland right in there again, takes it away. His fourth.
Again, we talked about the beginning of the year, especially for so many of these young guys.
Get that!
For Rip City. Scotty Lewis all the way. Holland denied.
Holland defending Jones, pounding him right on top of him. A double. Punched by.
Now, off the ball, his ability to make plays and create events stood out in a significant way all season long. He put up some great steal and block rates, and his length, his hands, and his natural feel led to a good amount of takeaways, playing passing lanes, blowing up dribble handoffs, and making plays help side for a team that was in dire need of it all year. Now, he also still has some things to work through rotationally and in his positioning as a young player, but he was a good enough athlete to make up for it and still make an impact in a lot of ways. His motor has long been the defining piece of his game, and he showed it most in these moments of recovery and transition on chase downs and selling out to fully get back into a play and come up with a steal or a loose ball. And even though it was more inconsistent than we were used to seeing in the past, there haven't been too many players his age capable of pulling off some of these plays, especially when we account for the adjustment to the speed of the G League and time and score.
He's the smaller London Johnson, so wants to back him down. Holland comes over for the help, and there's the steal. You want to get that win.
But I think there's extra motivation here when you look at all the executives.
LaBissiere with his back to the basket. Dumps off to Jones.
Oh.
No. Shot clock's at 1. Lewis missing. And Mania back to Hagans, trying to go into the lane.
Holland diving for the loose ball.
Here leads the team an assist. Hands it off to Jenkins, who misses from up top. Offensive rebound.
Kings have numbers. Ledoux, give me that!
Point lead here. We see a double team on Holland. His pass is stolen by Hinton. Hinton goes up, and
The
Holland.
offense and a steal. Clinton Rose, and they help.
A big portion of his offense came in transition, and partially due to that ability to make plays, turning defense into offense, but he's also one of the best athletes in the class. He's explosive at the rim, especially off that left leg, but can go off a 2 as well, and he's a threat to put someone on a poster when given daylight. He's fast in the open floor, he ran lanes extremely hard, and is capable of taking it off the glass and going coast to coast himself. Now, this isn't always the most reliable source of offense in every situation or on a game-to-game basis, but Holland excelled here. He was highly efficient and will likely continue to should be in some fashion, especially if he lands in a spot that likes to run and or has some great playmakers around him.
Nobody out ahead. It's showtime.
That, you know, you can't emulate anywhere else.
Oh! Holland just runs by him.
Tipped out, Darlin has it to Holland.
Finishes with. There's Ron Holland getting the steal, showing you the defense. He's going to challenge Fareed. Oh, he's soon have potentially teams and affiliates from every NBA team in the G League.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, this year obviously we'll have the Rip City remix, which is
In more of a half-court setting, he had a lot of success as a slasher, and to me, he's the best wing in this class in that area. He did a good job of getting downhill using his quickness, his stride length, and power and determination to get to his spots and stay on his driving lane. And while the usage won't be nearly the same in the NBA, his ability to work off of dribble handoffs, tossbacks, and pistol action can be replicated in a lot of places. And though he'll need to be a respectable shooter to draw real closeouts in the league, he took advantage and showed he was capable when they were there this year. His usage of push crosses, misdirection, and a handful of different pickups and deceleration was also impressive on those drives. The finishing is a work in progress, but his ability to adjust and avoid contests in the air always stood out to me, and he got to the free throw line at a good rate at the G League level. Now again, he won't have anywhere near the same level of creation duties, at least early, but the way that he can attack on limited dribbles, his athleticism, combined with what should be an emphasis on cutting, moving, and screening more in his next situation, give him a good amount to pour into here.
9 on the next dead ball. Holland turns the corner.
Kings have turnover number 21. Here's Holland attacking.
Rips ignite apart. And Jason Hart said, I got to get this guy going to the lane. Rod Holland to his left.
Air getting minutes, Murray getting minutes. Holland all the way.
Second quarter, and they're at half century now. Ron Holland.
Knight quit passing. It goes to Holland. Holland splits two defenders.
Here's Holland with a good pump fake. Gets all the way to the lane and to the left.
Holland inside. Guys that helped in his development said one of the things
He leave his feet. 2 to go on the shot clock. Johnson has to hoist. Long rebound by Holland. Hook shot from Holland off glass.
He's going to have to force something up here. Gets to the basket. No good, but the putback is good.
The most obvious improvement area for Ron Holland is his three-point shooting. He shot just 24% from 3 on the year, and similarly off the catch, at times being hesitant and often inconsistent mechanically. He has workable energy transfer and upper mechanics, though the hand placement can vary and he has a pronounced dip, but the shot prep and footwork can use some real attention. He often did his work late, the balance was inconsistent, and you match that with some indecisiveness and you usually get mixed results at best. Now the adjustment straight from high school to the NBA line is a huge one, especially for someone who wasn't a shooter at previous levels, so the volume and variety of shots that he took is an undeniable positive, at least as far as progression goes, but it remains a big deal in how he makes an impact. One, to keep him respectable as a spacer and providing one of the easiest sources for offense, and also in attracting closeouts to open up his slashing. It'll be a work in progress for sure, but league average will be the goal, and between the willingness, fluidity, and free throw percentage improvement, I think he'll have a decent shot at getting there.
ball out of the paint.
There goes London Johnson getting downhill. The defense collapses. Holland open from the wing.
Early in the year, his decision-making and turnover issues were about as rough as anyone's in the last couple years. Most of it was a product of the adjustment from never being a primary to being the best advantage creator on a team at a professional level overnight. But even with that in mind, there's still a lot of room for improvement in a scaled down role. He had a tendency to get out of control as a driver and could get tunnel vision, resulting in contested rim attempts and his share of turnovers and late passing reads. And while his handle has improved, it can definitely use tightening, especially in traffic and avoiding digs. As a passer, you can see him predetermining and processing things a step slower than they needed to be. There were other times where he'd have the right idea, but it was just simply a bad pass. So continuing to make the most out of opportunities wherever on the court will be important, even in a more appropriate role. Now, he did make real improvements as a playmaker and probably gets a little more criticism here than he deserves, because he had his share of great moments moving the ball, making plays off of his own drives, and even a few reads in the pick and roll. I'm not saying it was spectacular, but he was a lot better by the end of the year than the first impressions would have suggested. And for someone who projectably wants real playmaking duties in the league, continuing to improve here is vital.
You know, between being on the road, we saw Johnny on the road for some games, for 2 of the games, I believe.
Tyler Smith from the corner.
It's really a half step, but just kind of that little extra effort to turn the corner. And then he was able to cover a lot of ground.
His first half leads all scorers with 16. Holland, pick and roll, nice pocket pass to Almanzo.
So you live with him taking the tough shots because, again, he's a tough shot maker.
Holland fires it over to Buzelis, and Buzelis hits
like 1 or 2 seconds left on the shot clock. Norris
Cole to the base. Wraps it around. It's a good look three from London.
Well, they work hard. That's just not a character problem.
Smith will launch from there.
His finishing at the rim was something that stood out both numbers-wise and on the film throughout the season. At his size, it was a bit concerning that he ended the year hovering around the low 50s in the half court at the rim in a league that's known for having relatively poor rim protectors and defensive 3 seconds. So for him, continuing to make better decisions in his attempts, play under control in traffic, and adding strength will be important, along with also playing off of 2 feet more and just keeping things simple. The great thing is he absolutely has all the athletic tools to make it happen, which you can't teach, but being more efficient here should be a point of emphasis given what it means to his success and the upcoming defensive talent in the NBA.
Decision over a year ago. He actually considered doing 2 years.
And lastly, on offense, I've mentioned this throughout the year if you followed the channel, but the way that he's improved as a creator this year has been one of my favorite developments of any prospect. Now, it's far from a strength of his, and you can immediately tell he's got a ways to go just by looking at the splits. But going from someone who was very interior oriented but could drive and shoot the occasional pull-up to this year finding multiple good self-created looks each game, adding to the handle, getting to step backs, and showing some pristine footwork in spurts was all significant. Now, there's no guarantee that he'll continue at that rate, and the threshold for getting real shot creating duties in the current NBA is super high, but no other player in the class made these types of strides here, and I think it's a credit to his work ethic and gives him an added element of upside that might be glossed over at times.
Handoff, Jenkins. Holland, what a good head fake. It was so subtle. Holland uses the screen, mid-range jump.
Now, as we alluded to earlier, he has a lot of things to patch up defensively. Off the ball, he'll need to be more disciplined in his help positioning and know personnel to limit easy opportunities that he gave up. It wasn't that he had a big gambling issue or took himself out of position, but more of a tendency to ball watch and just stick too far away from shooters. Some of this in the rotations I think will naturally look closer to what we saw from him before the Ignite, but it just wasn't there this year. And then on the ball, he'll need to continue working on his closeouts, screen navigation, and footwork to avoid being in recovery a little more. He wasn't terrible, but paying more attention to detail, improving his technique, and just staying solid will allow him to do a lot more role-wise defensively. Now, this was probably one of the worst contexts to evaluate team defense and principles of any prospect in the last couple years, but these are real things he can clean up going forward.
Locking in defensively. Nice take there.
But during the road trip, they were 9th, the most blocks per game the last 5 games.
Ron Holland will most likely play in a more defined role as an off-ball and slashing threat as he enters the league, and then down the line I think he could become more of a third offensive option in a good situation. And on the defensive side, I think he provides immediate value with his versatility and event creation, and he has the potential to be a stopper, mostly guarding wings but switching regularly. At his best, I think he could roughly get into that borderline all-star range, and on the lower end he's likely more of an energy wing in the middle of a rotation, with his shot being a massive swing skill and all of that. He might have the widest range of the most common lottery prospects. I'd personally consider him as high as the top 3 depending on the team, but I know many still view him as more late lotto, and I think teams like Charlotte, Portland, Utah, and then San Antonio make most sense, and I wouldn't mind Atlanta either. There wasn't a great comparison that I could come up with, but I think Gerald Wallace is an attainable one, slashing wing who excelled defensively and played with high energy every night and went to another level on the nights and seasons the shot was working. And I actually think Ron is in a significantly better starting spot as a shooter. I also think a guy like Tari Eason could be used as a reference for more of a middle level outcome in the future.
That was a wide open look. It was a steal. Eason just took it right away from Paolo.
An athletic wing with a high motor and positive defensive and slashing qualities and overall offensive upside, Ron Holland makes a lot of sense in the modern NBA, and particularly in this class. But also being a current inconsistent shooter and questionable decision maker coming from an Ignite program that's had shaky early returns and won't even exist going forward leaves some real questions out there. I tend to buy his production and skill development as a top 5 guy in this class, but he'll be what's possibly the most interesting prospect to see where he lands on draft night.